Hi, Frank. Good to
Hello.
see you.
Good to be here.
Okay. I would like to call to order the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is May 6, 2020. We are in Zoom video conferencing. Mr. Howell?
Kate Bricks,
Here.
Jenny Butler,
Here.
Jenny Cummings,
Here?
Marge Gavoni,
Here.
Pete Hensler,
Here.
Anna Keeney,
Here.
Kate Levier,
Here.
Scott McLean, Christina Small,
Here.
Molly Cochran.
Here.
Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah. I'm the only one.
Take it away, girls.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. You have absolutely no idea how good it is to hear young voices doing that.
They're all running from the camera real fast now.
It was good to have you. Okay. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we do not have any adjustments tonight.
Okay. And now it's an opportunity for public input. If any of the public would like to comment on items which are not on the agenda. The people who are here by phone should let me know. Yes. Would you like to comment? 5266. Would you like to comment? Okay. Going once. Okay, not. All right. So we'll move on to the agenda then. Now we have Frank Locker here to present the middle school visioning report. Mr. Howell, do you want to do some introduction?
I'd love to start with an introduction. RSU 14 has had the pleasure of working with Frank now for a little over a year. And actually closer now to a year and a half, Frank, that we've been working together. And the initial introduction came through Lyndon Keck. And Lyndon Keck, who worked with Portland Design Team, had been a long-time architect within the district. PDT had done a number of buildings within our district. And as we started to plan for a new Wyndham Middle School, one part of our process is working on an educational vision to determine what it is that we want for our new building and how will the building support the program and the visioning that we have. So that was our initial introduction to Frank, and what we soon found was that Frank could provide much more guidance for us than just simply working on visioning for a building project. And so through some frequent conversations and through learning about Frank's experiences with building and designing schools across the world, we had the opportunity to design a couple of educational experiences. One, a middle school educational conference, and then also a fall visioning process in which both middle schools had the opportunity to participate. And we're going to hear a little bit today from Drew and Randy about their experiences through this process. Just a quick update for the public who may watch this Zoom video down the road. Wyndham Middle School project has moved up in the list because the first three projects the state has already started to work with and has started that funding process. And if I remember correctly, there's 3 elementary schools that are ahead of us currently. We have moved up the list, and so we're now number 2 in this process. I do not know at this time where and when we're going to start our planning process with the state. But what's been nice over the last year is that we've been able to do many of the planning processes to get ourselves ready for that project when funds are released and our bond dates released. But it's been an absolute joy working with Frank. I've learned a lot from him, And we continue to maintain contact as Frank leads project-based learning projects across the world right now. And so, Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about Wyndham Middle School and Jordan Small Middle School and the visioning projects that you've done.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Before I get in, I have a technical question. May I share my screen?
Yeah, I'm going to make you a co-host right now.
I'm going to make a co-host, okay. And then while he's doing that, yes, I'm lucky I get to work around the world, but I also want to stress my Wyndham affiliation. So I did similar work your high school, which was now maybe what, 15 years ago or something like that. Time flies. And also I was resident of Wyndham for a number of years, and now my daughter and son-in-law live in Wyndham. So I like to keep coming back. Are you ready for me, Chris?
You should be all set, Frank, to be able to share.
Okay. All right, here we are. I'm going to share my screen. And I have a PowerPoint presentation here, which I do believe I can set this in slideshow mode. If I mess up, I'll go back to go here. It's doing something. Here we are. Can you see my screen?
Oh, yes.
Yes?
Now,
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so Chris has already started to outline what we had done. I'll just amplify it a little bit. We created the concept of an educational conference followed by a visioning conference, educational visioning. And when I do this work normally, and I do this with many, many schools across the country, et cetera, it's usually bundled into one. But we had the situation where this work was being stimulated by anticipated funding for Wyndham Middle School, but yet we wanted to think district-wide about what was most appropriate for middle school kids. So we, to give, in a way, equal voice for Jordan Small stakeholders, we created the concept of the educational conference, and in that we simply focused on education as it is now and the future of education. And then we followed that with a vision which embraced the conference work, the educational conference work, augmented it, but then also segued it into facilities. And as we did the facilities work, we gave voice to Jordan Small, as well as Wyndham, and we worked through similarities and differences. And so the final report recognizes both of them. So here's a little bit more detail. We did the educational conference in August. And as I said, it was education and district-wide. And then we came back in October, extended it. We took a deeper dive, and we focused on both facilities for both schools. Oh, by the way, I'm going to throw about 19 or so slides at you, 18 to 20, something like that. There's a lot of stuff here. Your choice. If there's something that you have a question on, make a note. We can come back to it. We can always go back to the slide. Or if it's driving and really important at that very moment, just give a shout out, and I'll divert to be able to respond to your questions. So this was our overall process. And now I'm going to share with you key outcomes, concepts developed by stakeholders, who, by the way, included educators from both schools, included district educators, included students, included parents, and a few others from the town. So at the very end, towards the very end, this would be our third day of working together, I asked the participants to identify the keywords for future education in our middle schools and keywords for facilities as we work them out with various funding sources. And so these are their words. The way we did this is single cards. Each person puts one word or two words down. We put them together and we see the composite. Now, this to me is really important, because in this process, as we go along, there will be many, many, many meetings, and a lot will be said. But I think it's really important that the spokespeople, no matter who they are focused on what the people who created the visions think are most important. And so here's what they said. Variations on the word. Can you see my cursor okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, variations on the word collaboration, collaborative, personalized, etc., cited the most number of times. Creativity and creating possibilities. Open-ended possibilities, not just getting to the bottom line correct answer. Innovative and future-looking ideas, and then fluid and adaptable. Quite unlike our traditions in education, which are usually rigid and timetabled. So I take these in their composite as beliefs and is that education really does need to change in its most fundamental manners. And then on the facilities side, look at these words. Flexible or variations on flexible. Cited 4 times for the word flexible, 8 times for flexible and warm. Community and community place to be and unified, and then innovative and comfy. I've been in your current building, and I know that these words do not describe that building at all. And so what our stakeholders looking for is a very different kind of a statement about caring for education and caring for middle school students. They developed concepts that were defined as the most important concepts. The way this was done is I shared PowerPoints with them. I was the messenger of practices from around the country and around the world, and they assessed how important those concepts were as I presented them, and then they met in small groups and discussed it among themselves, and this is what came out of it. So on the education side, they are wanting increased student engagement. They're wanting a strong overlay of social emotional learning while students are learning the core learning requirements. So it's not just about facts and knowing content. It's about learning to know yourself, how to work with other people, how to solve problems, all at the same time. And that can be done, but it means changing the educational delivery model. And 21st century skills and competencies, these concepts have been brewing for about 15 years now, and they're fairly well developed, characterized largely by the 4 C's, collaboration and creativity and critical thinking. And I always forget the 4th one, I'm sorry. These have developed into a movement and are very strongly supported by educators across the country, around the world. On the facility side, more nuanced here, and I just chose to put in the details because you can read these while I'm doing a big overview, because they do support these concepts and some of them may not be immediately understandable. So 21st century schools basically means making building designs to support the kind of learning that is evolving as most important in this 21st century. And that, of course, includes these ones that were cited above by your stakeholders. Safety and security. Well, I'll tell you this, we've had safety and security problems for a couple of decades now, most obviously. One of the, and this rises to the top in many of the groups that I work with. So what's really interesting here is the recognition that there are international principles to guide how we do that, and that's the crime prevention through environmental design. But there is now a recognition that to get safety and security, you have to go back and do social emotional learning, because more than 75% of school infractions are caused by people who are related to the school in some manner. So adding barriers isn't necessarily going to get you where you want to go. And that's what we discussed as part of our overall group discussions. The next point, flexible, varied, brain-based furniture. These concepts come out of brain research. They come out of what supports student learning. What we know absolutely and definitely is that hard plastic shells that will last for 1,000 years and do not let students wiggle, and that are actually uncomfortable after 43 minutes of sitting in them, are the worst kind of furniture you could have if you really want to support students being deeply involved in their work. And so here's the key point, allowing students to move And then allowing the teacher and the students to change the room modalities with a moment's notice without making noise and without having to put those little tennis balls on the bottom. So phenomenal strides in furniture. And oh, by the way, the furniture is the cheapest component of any new building. And so the power you get out of it is astounding. Here's one that has nuanced words: 21st century learning studios, not classrooms, because in the kind of the learning we're wanting, the traditional notion of a classroom and the images that that conjures up in everybody's mind, including the parents, no longer suffices. We want spaces that are hands-on and students getting quote unquote dirty and working with each other. That doesn't necessarily fit in a clean rectangular box. And then teacher planning centers. We tend to forget the teachers when we plan our buildings. We do rows and rows of classrooms. We maybe make a teacher's lounge and it's way over there behind the cafeteria or something like that. That doesn't support teacher relationship building. That doesn't support teachers knowing students better. So the teacher planning center is a concept of basically reinforcing building relationships through strategic positioning of where teachers are doing their prep time, their collaboration time, etc. Am I going too fast? I'm okay? I see people shaking their heads. Yes, okay. All right, here we go. Next one. So we did develop most of these concepts on our educational conference days. The group chose two for a deeper dive when we came back in the October visioning sessions. And what those were project-based learning, which is that process of students learning their core requirements while doing projects. And oh, by the way, they're also learning social emotional skills. They're learning the 4 C's. They're learning how to present. They're learning how to organize their material. They're learning how to work with others. So lots of essential or soft skills are taught while this is being done. And the way in which they work this out, I asked them, to endorse how engaging it would be, which largely comes from my sharing them the Gallup poll research that shows that student engagement across this country drops precipitously from grade 5 to grade 11. And it drops from 75% engagement to 32% engagement. So middle school is the beginning of the downward slope. And how do you turn that around? Our constituents, our stakeholders here said, this is really engaging, project-based learning. And then making things to learn is a nuanced subcomponent of project-based learning, but it's worthy of good exploration because it's so powerful. It's part of a movement that is actually centered at Stanford, at the D School, and in the Silicon Valley, and California, and in Boston. So ironically, the high-tech people really want students to be learning, using their hands. And this is not tech shop. This is using your hands to develop cognitive concepts and launch prototypes and try things out, and they'll fail, and you do them again. Here's a school in Cambridge, Mass, where kids are working at big collaborative tables and they're making things, and they've got a laser printer in the next room and piles of plywood and things like that. And so this is 7 out of 10. So that's a pretty strong endorsement. Moving on. So those were the 2 concepts that we did a deep dive in because that's what was essential to further understand the ideas that had been developed in the educational conference. Learning modalities. In that, let's see, this was at the end of our first day. I asked, end of day 2, I asked the group, I gave them 22 different modalities, ways in which students can learn. And their job was to, each one of them, was to identify what they thought were the most effective and what they thought were the least effective. Now, this is partly important because we're looking to shift the educational delivery model. And we certainly would want to embrace the methods that are most effective and tone down the ones that we don't believe are very effective. But it's also important for facilities. Traditional school buildings are designed for lecturing, teacher presentation, and students being pretty passive. 21st century facilities are designed for other things: student engagement, students doing projects, students collaborating. So if we end up with our list having things like small group work, project-based learning, students tutoring and in peer tutoring and teaching each other, we're going to end up with different shaped classrooms. And this is a powerful foundation statement for how to guide the design when that time comes. Oh, look at the two least effective: lecture and direct teaching. Lecturing increases in this country on a regular basis as one moves through the secondary school years. And it may just, so this is that Gallup poll chart: 75% at grade 5, 32% at grade 11, a very clear drop year by year by year. And it may just be that this line is strongly informed by an excessive amount of lecturing. And oh, by the way, lecturing is the least effective way to remember anything. It's a very effective way for a teacher to share content, but whether students remember it or not is a whole different issue. So this is a very powerful page. We did the school transformation and development map. Now, this is a tool that I developed with an educator about 15 years ago. And it came about because I was concerned, and in discussion, we were concerned that there's this myriad of possibilities as to how one delivers education and how one makes buildings. But most educators are very familiar with what's in their building, and they're very familiar with district guidelines and initiatives, but not necessarily so familiar with things going on in other places around the world, et cetera. That's for both facilities and educational delivery. Many teachers in many places have hardly left the district. And in these processes, we're asking them to be informed consumers, informed decision makers, and we're also asking them, as we roll out these concepts, we're asking them to embrace change. And so what the school transformation and development map does is it allows stakeholders to articulate what they're doing now and articulate what they want for the future. So what this is a series of 45 statements about education arranged in rows. And these are just catchwords here on this diagram. And it has 35 facilities concepts. And then with each one of those issues, they're arranged in statements related to 5 columns: maintaining tradition, to transformed, and then nuances in the middle. So the stakeholders working in groups of 3 take each one of these issues, 45 educational issues, 35 facilities issues, and they identify what they're doing now by pegging it to a particular column. Column 1, column 2, column 3, et cetera. And then what do they want in the future? So education now, where is it? What column is it in? Education future, what column is it in? And so when you do that for a whole succession of rows, and then the computer does the scoring, you very quickly find out what the difference is between where you are now and where you want to be. And the bigger the gap between now and future, the more work there is to do to get there on education. And the bigger the gap between now and future on facilities, the more the future building might not look like traditional school. And so in my mind, this tool not only opens up possibilities and provokes discussion, and that's why we do it in groups, but it also creates a numeric measure of how much change is desired. The first building I ever did this was a high school in Michigan. And when I went back to open house, the principal came out and he greeted me and he said, welcome to our 3.68 high school. So here's where you are. Your stakeholders say that your educational delivery right now it averages out at 2.54. That is solidly in column 2. They want you to be 4.25, which is very strongly in column 4. That is almost 2 columns of a leap. That's a giant leap. And that's not to dismiss what you're doing now. Goodness knows, your schools are good by traditional measures. But what's evolving in the 21st century are a whole series of measures of student success, of student growth that don't get measured in traditional methods. So let's look at the facility side. Your buildings, this is both buildings, don't forget, were assessed at 2.10 or a little lower on the scale than education, and your facilities were desired to be 4.61, a little higher. So 2.5 columns as a leap. And it's not unusual for a slight amount of disparity between education and facilities. They usually parallel each other, but they will never be accurate. It's just because of the way the algorithms are built into them. So this may be a talking point. You may open school, either a remodeled Jordan Small with local funding, or maybe a state-funded Wyndham, and be able to walk out and say, welcome to our 4.25 school. So with all of this work done, conceiving education and starting the shift to what this means for facilities, and oh, by the way, we couldn't even begin to talk about what's important for facilities if we hadn't first established what's important for education. So, but with this, we then can segue into how we want to organize our building. This challenge on school organization asked the stakeholders to think about how teachers and students would be organized within the building. Partly scheduling, partly relationships, partly sharing of duties, partly some embracing learning concepts, and then partly also facilities. So it's hard to pull all of these apart. But I put these here in this order for this reason. There were some standard choices to make, and there I put those on the left-hand side because these ones were among the standard choices and they were the most commonly opted for. So look what appeals to our stakeholder. Thematic, vertical, small learning communities. Instead of organizing your schools by grade level, this might mean that you take, say, Wyndham Middle School, and you make an arts wing, if you will, or an arts academy within it, and you have students from all grades. And they're learning differently than students in the rest of the school, maybe because they're more right-brained, maybe because they are needing to draw and express themselves or act, even when they're doing science. Other schools do this and it's really successful. Integration of specials with core. Phys ed and science, maybe. Art and English, maybe. Or other things that break the paradigm that specialist teachers always run separate curriculums. And as long as we continue running separate curriculums, students will never receive the big boost that comes from that overlay. And what research shows is that when students are being asked or given the opportunity to express their learning through other means than the traditional means, learning goes up. So a student who's used to writing a 6-page paper in Times New Roman, 12-point, double-spaced, wide margins, paginated, given the opportunity to do a storyboard instead of an analysis of a short story, because a storyboard could be the basis for doing a video, all of a sudden, many boundaries are released. And the student still addresses the same core issues, but does them in a different way. So that would be one example of how arts could be integrated with, say, English. And of course, phys ed with sciences move right into wellness and all those important lifelong learnings. Here's one that is surprisingly unique. Teacher autonomy. So you take so middle school's teacher teaming, English, math, social studies, sciences, team those teachers up with a dedicated group of students and give them power to be completely autonomous for everything. The schedule, the sequence in which they do things, who teaches what students are doing. It moves overall management of the building from the 19th century concept, the 20th century concept, that it's all controlled from the top. And oh, by the way, the schedule is done once a year by somebody who's a specialist, and they tell us everything we have to do, even though they don't know what we're doing on a daily basis or how kids are learning. And it moves it to the level of the teachers, and it empowers them. And I did share with the group a school I've got in Ohio that has done that and has phenomenal learning outcomes. And in fact, the principals and some of the teachers of both schools are in contact with that school in Ohio to explore whether they can adopt this model, or at least on a trial basis. So that's exciting stuff. Now, the right-hand column are concepts developed by the small groups that were working on this. And I won't get into each of these because I think I've shared enough. But what this is that instead of simply taking a pre-established possibility, they invented their own. So you can pick up some of the words, and some of the words are repeated, but then there's nuance, like here's a 2-year looping, or a 2-year grouping followed by another 2-year grouping. Oh, and looping. Oops, I'm sorry, I didn't do that on purpose. This one may actually say it all. Multi-age, teacher looping, integration of specials with core, a wellness group to support teaming, embedded special education, and gifted and talented. That's a lot of stuff. That can happen in a building if we have small learning communities where we're not trying to make everything exactly the same. We're trying to give identity and autonomy to smaller groups of teachers and students. So moving on. With all of this said, the participants then took prompts from about 12, 13, 14 examples of, for lack of a better term, suites of learning spaces, formerly known as classrooms. So it's not just isolated rooms, it's how they're grouped. And this sequence I'm going to show you of those 12 or 13 are the top 4 or 5 or 6 that they deemed most appropriate. And you can see what the scoring was. So this one was a traditional school with a corridor and 6 different separate classrooms. You could just see the remnants of the classrooms, and it still does have classrooms, but it has other things. So some of the classrooms have been redesigned and opened up to be breakout tutorial zone, presentation zone, there's a stage, etc. And in this school, the student workflow starts in one room and it comes out into this breakout area, and then it comes over here to the stage, and then it's over in the commons area. So in the course of a day, a student may be learning in 4 or 5 different places, all under the watchful eyes of the students. So yes, this is an early years center, but I've got elementary schools, high schools, and middle schools across the country adopting these concepts and creating spaces for learning, places for learning that invigorate students and teachers. Next one. This one's also here in New England. It's a middle school, and it was endorsed by 5 out of 7 of our table team, so that's a very good plurality. It has 8 classrooms arranged around a commons area. This is the photo of the commons area. Look at the classroom labels. They are always bonded by interdisciplinary specialties. So social studies and English, always together. Those circly things are double doors to allow the students to flow back and forth. Science and math. Now, this is a prescriptive connection, and since this was done about 10 years ago, we know there are many other connections, but hey, this is a really good start. And I would also point out that the classrooms are not rectangular. And the reason they're not rectangular is that this pentagon side gives more corners. And what we know about student collaboration work is it's noisy, has movement, and so the more corners you have, the more spots there are for students to find places to work. So it all nests together here in a concept. And look at the center. The center is a presentation zone with a LCD projector and a drop-down screen. And this is just begging for students or outside visitors to come and make a presentation. It's not, oh, move the globe over, move that map of the world over and make some room for a student to stand in front of the LCD projector so that they can present. This is high quality level performance grade presentation, which honors their work, right? And makes visitors want to come back. So the next one, and we're going down in order of preference here. This was a competition winner, so we don't have finished photos, but we do have a floor plan, and the floor plan is instructive. It was, theoretically a classroom, but it actually is much more than that. It has an active zone in the middle and student team zones on the perimeter. It has an outside which reflects the inside and a patio and workstations, etc. So on good weather, fall and spring, you could be outside as well as inside, and then it has connections to the next room. A lot of powerful stuff here. And there's another one here, which was actually cited from two different places. The one on the bottom is outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's a high school. The one on the top right is in Melbourne, Australia, and it's a primary school. But the notion here is that, yes, and this one was converted from existing building. So you can see classroom was a classroom, but now it's a double room, classroom and classroom. Instead of assigning one of these to Mr. Jones and one of these to Ms. Smith and one of these to whomever, they said, these are all our classrooms. We share these rooms. Our teachers work in teams, our students work in teams on projects. And instead of trying to simulate the various kind of furniture and equipment in every single room, which we can't afford, we're gonna make the rooms different, and they will be destination spots. They will be go-to places. So this is a room for direct teaching. This is a room that's a student study center. This is a room that's a theater space. It's got a green screen. It's got a permanent video camera. How tempting would it be for a group of 120 kids to have a permanent video camera where they can always go and present or practice their presentations, etc. This is a space that's a makerspace, like an art space, and this has everything in it from seminar tables to collaborative group discussion areas. Here's one outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's a high school. I share it because it's a brand new building, but it's got all the same features, including circulation that doesn't look like corridors. It's wider and shorter and lets students do work inside the corridors. This happens to be a makerspace smack dab in the middle of the whole complex. This is the one in Ohio that I reference as being very successful with standardized test scores showing that kids learn better. And this is the one with teacher autonomy. So instead of corridors, it's got extended learning areas with a variety of furniture. And you can see the plan where the formal learning space is along the edge, and you walk through the blue thing, which is this in photographs, in order to get from one spot to another. This is the home base for 5 teachers and 125 kids. And this is where those test scores are going up because for a lot of reasons, including teacher autonomy. Next slide. We did a sidebar with a small pull-out group looking at furniture. And these were their most appropriate choices. And look closely at this furniture because this doesn't look like the tablet armchair that's made out of polypropylene and is going to last 1,000 years. The top photos are from a school where the furniture in the extended learning area is intended for students to pick it up and move it around. So even things that are big club chairs have wheels on the front, skids on the back, and a built-in handle. So even in this case, a fifth grader can pick that up and move it around. And what the students do on their choiceful work time in this zone, which is aligned with the classrooms, it's the walkthrough space. They create places that they're going to work, personalized learning spaces. And then when they're done, some other group comes along and they may modify them. These two boys made a booth out of 2 ottomans, 2 bookcases, a club chair, and a table. And that may be there for 2 days. It may be there for 3 days. It may be there for 2 hours. That's what happens here. And it all happens quietly because of the carpeting, because of the acoustical features. Here are 2 photos of group collaboration areas. And in fact, they are tucked into one of the designs I just showed you. How powerful would a group discussion be on seating like this, as opposed to turning around in your tablet armchairs and talking to each other? This honors student work. Lastly, on furniture is makerspace. So this is a buzzword, but it's part of the slow transition away from passive learning towards active and hands-on learning, prototyping, inventing things, etc. This happens to be, the reason I picked this is that this is probably the most iconic one in the country. It's at Stanford, it's university level, but it's got a wonderful process from a place to store tools, to a place to make things, to a place to store things. And oops, as you make scrap and goof, you have a place to dump things. It's all part of a process, almost a natural life cycle. And so these selections were highly valued by that group doing the furniture. Lastly, then, we did some essential planning concepts, and we broke into a couple of different teams. So the Jordan Small group created some concepts since they had an existing building, and we didn't expect we could spend a lot of money on it. Hopefully we'll have some small amounts of annual money. They developed a number of concepts, one of which was very intentionally grouping students into two zones, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and then applying concepts of making things flexible, but not only spaces, but thinking in every part of the building. And oh, how's that? How's this label? Wow, office. Making the office the kind of place that is a wow, which is a great social and civic attitude. This was one path of travel. The other path of travel was for the bigger building. And for this one, I drew out, had them develop working teams and draw out concepts. And so some of them are here. At the center is a dining commons and a learning commons and an arrival space, a kind of space that everybody would go to and find each other, as well as meetings, etc. And then from this center, oops, there's a typo there, direct access to the gym, etc., auditorium, and therefore it's a lobby. So we're not wasting money on lobbies, we're double using what we already have. Gatekeeper at the main entrance for control, and then small learning communities. And this is what that looked like. Now, this is my computer drawing of their design. And so there's the center with the commons and the dining commons together, a community zone, a meeting place for the entire school, and then the gym comes off it, an auditorium comes off it, and then these circles represent small learning communities. The dotted line represents security zones. And yes, security is harder to do here than in a traditional building, although I will have to say that the traditional building presents a lot of downsides as well, but we take it for granted that that's the way life should be. Life with CEPTED principles, crime prevention through environmental design, can be a lot better than what we assume traditional buildings to be. So this is the concept for the school, including articulated parent drop-off and bus drop-off, and also a pond back here, science experiments, etc., maybe even art in the pond, and then the playgrounds. And I know your campus, I know you've got many of these already in place, and it's a matter of then slipping in this new building so that it's a seamless connection to the rest of the really good things. You have an unusually good campus, to the rest of the things that you've got. I do believe that this is the last slide. Yes, it is. So I'd be glad to cover any on any slide that you would like me to run back to.
I can't see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody want to ask a question or look at a particular slide? I liked the fact that because I was part of this process, and when the students were, some of the students were involved in the furniture, looking at the furniture, and that was really, they picked very interesting furniture. It was great.
Yes, and I wasn't surprised.
No.
I find that, I mean, I do anecdotal research because I work with so many different groups, and it's one of the wonderful things about my job. But I find that quite often adults jump to speak for students, and empowering students like we did here, either as a participant in a small group where they can really have a voice and be heard, or on things like you cite for selecting furniture, comes, you end up with articulated statements that you might at first say, oh, yeah? And then you say, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not bound by tradition. They are usually, and I find in these groups, students work very seriously. And it's that old saying, you honor them and they will honor you. And so we give them a voice, and they rise to the occasion. I think it's wonderful when that happens. So your comment about their choices, I think is very fair. And this is how we learn. And this is how we make schools that kids want to keep coming back to every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we should make our schools, we should make our next iteration of middle schools the kind of places that kids run into faster in the morning than they want to leave in the afternoon, which is the opposite of most schools.
Okay, why don't we, unless somebody wants to talk about a particular screen, why don't we go to the, why don't you relinquish the,
Okay. Yep, we are.
the screen.
It's coming slowly. And I'll stop sharing. There you are. It's back to you now.
All right, so does anybody have anything, any remarks they'd like? Kate?
Thank you. Thanks, Frank. This was a really great presentation and illuminating. What is this the end of the visioning process, and then this product moves on to the architectural stage? How does that work?
Yes, but when Chris Howell and I worked out a scope of work, which I guess he reminds me was a year and a half ago, we made a cafeteria menu of possibilities. And while I haven't opened that up for a while, my recollection is that could have me continuing on, doing a pass-off with the architect, doing a workshop with the architect, developing the ed specs, space needs in detail, working with the state of Maine guidelines, and then, of course, community meetings in whatever manner we have them. So in a lot of ways, this is the last official end, but it doesn't need to end if you don't want it to end.
Thank you.
Yep.
Marge?
Refresh my memory because I can't remember where we left off. Is this a 6 to 8 or a 5 to 8?
I'm not sure that we've exactly settled that. There was good discussion about 5 through 8 and the advantages of doing so. There are some issues about enrollments and balance, and then shifting the grade levels, because when you even the what might seem like a simple act of shifting one grade level phenomenally changes the capacity of the elementary schools, and you can go from overcrowding to okay in one fell swoop. So it's a great question, and this is where the focus on middle schools then segues into the focus on all grade levels.
If I can just jump in here for a second, the committee that developed the application to the state back in 16, 17, I think was the last iteration that was eventually presented. Initially was presented as a 6-8 middle school with the option of doing a 5-8 that was included within the plan that was submitted to the state. We've not had that opportunity to talk to Scott Brown from Maine Department of Education with major capital projects on pursuing that 5-8. I think it's something that we want to pursue as a district, given some of our crowding issues on the Wyndham side of the house. Then we're also starting to see some numbers bump up as building continues. And so to be able to look at a different grade configuration that would then open up space at Wyndham Primary, I think would be to our benefit. But ultimately, you know, part of that is going to be up to our friends at the state and what initially that they're willing to pay for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we all set? I guess
Okay.
so. Thank you so much, Frank, for this wonderful presentation. I really appreciate it. I know we all do.
Thank you, and thanks for asking me. I enjoyed being with you.
Good luck in Ecuador. Are you
Yeah.
still working there?
Yes. Yeah. I've got a project in Quito.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we're on hold now, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well,
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to leave the meeting, and I assume I'm the only one that leaves, right?
right.
Okay. If you all disappear, don't blame me. Okay.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, oh, one thing I did forget was, Chris, will we have copies of his presentation, the PowerPoint?
Sure. So for board members, there's a copy of Frank's PowerPoint that is now in your packet for tonight. In addition is the visioning portion that Frank talked about. And we will be using Frank to help us with developing the educational specifications that will be passed on to the architects whenever we have that opportunity to start that process. So I think he's got a great talent for taking some of our thoughts and really pushing us. And the other thing that I know I have benefited from my time with Frank is that my mental model is often what I've seen in Maine schools, and Frank has built and developed schools around the world. And so it kind of expands our thinking and things that we're going to talk about. So kind of a natural segue. We asked Drew and Randy to just come and talk a little bit about the work that they've done and the work that they've planned and some of the ideas that were generated after that visioning process.
So let's begin with Drew.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. So just in terms of a little bit of a history, project-based learning is not new to Wyndham Middle School. When I came in 5 years ago in 2015, we worked as a staff to develop a couple of focus areas, and project-based learning was something the staff had been working with a little bit prior. I'd had quite a bit of experience in Sanford implementing project-based learning within the school that I was principal at there. And so we moved to a few years later having all teams and all teachers complete about a 6 to 8 week experience for kids in the spring. And that's just kind of my style in terms of having everybody go through the process and try to support them along the way. And then we kind of took a step back for a year. And I think part of that was some of the I guess what you want to call it, tension right now between sort of autonomy and then what we would consider to be some of the more rigid curriculums that we have in terms of units of study and you know, more recently some of the math curriculum, and sort of there's that tension between, you know, fidelity and sort of box canned curriculums and keeping that to improve student learning and student engagement. And then we have sort of the rub of project-based learning, which is, meant to be a little bit more open, a little less sort of structured in its approach. And so we find ourselves back with the ability to get funded for a new building, to looking at that educational vision. And so I would say, without pushing the staff and having that expectation, we probably have about half of the staff that continues to work through project-based learning and offer opportunities for kids through, there's stuff around the VFW this year. We're going to continue the opioid epidemic study, things of that nature. And so I think a lot of it took root, and a lot of teachers continue to do that. I think some of the reasons that they do not is sort of feeling, for teams that do not participate, is feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the number of things that they have to teach and sort of things on the plate, and feeling like if some of those pieces could be removed, they could focus a little bit more on project-based learning. And there's also sort of a comfort with that. If you've taught in a particular way, mainly more lecture-based, a little more teacher-focused over 20 years, it might be a little bit of a shift to kind of release that autonomy back to kids. And so I think for me, in terms of what we're continuing to do this year, what I'd sent you is an example of a staff expedition. And that was my attempt. We developed that with a number of teachers at Wyndham Middle School. We were going to kick that off. We're going to start that on the teacher workshop day, the Friday before the COVID closure. And we had planned a huge event to go out in Portland as part of our own research. And we had to cancel that. And then the rest is sort of history in terms of falling apart. But I think that was really meant to have a couple of things, maybe in a sneaky way, which was to have teachers experience project-based learning for themselves, that type of learning, as opposed to maybe some of the more traditional methods in terms of staff professional development. Mm-hmm. And really, that was also my attempt at looking at intellectual curiosity and thinking about how, if we increase the intellectual curiosity of teachers and have them driving in every day, interested and curious and motivated about what they want to offer their kids, I wonder what the connection would be with student intellectual curiosity and how the two are sort of intertwined. And that sort of brings us back to that rub about some things that can sometimes pull away from that intellectual curiosity, which can be canned curriculums. And I'm not saying there aren't components of that are valuable, and that there aren't standards in there that are valuable and need to be taught. But I think we need to be able to find that balance. And so the idea behind the staff expedition was to kind of continue this work with Frank, make sure that everybody had a voice in thinking about the instructional model for the new Wyndham Middle School. And then we begin to kind of think about the instructional model, and then how we design a building around that. And to also kind of take a look at, where Frank left off with that particular picture. I didn't necessarily want to just say to the staff, hey, here it is. Sorry you didn't get to be involved in this. But to take that as a jumping off point and kind of look at how we might tweak or alter that as our vision develops. And then the last piece to kind of talk about is what we were doing was really, in terms of project-based learning, was just scratching the surface. So by no means would I say that we were, a project-based learning school, and that's the way in which kids learned on sort of a consistent basis. But that's what I think we'd like to get to. A lot of that, though, I think comes with sort of changing the structure. And so that's I presented a little while ago before the closure, I think at one of the last board meetings, around the budget addition of the pilot team and an additional applied arts teacher. And I think if you can think about that conversation, that takes us back to a little bit of what Frank had presented in this. Right. Is if you think about, if I had a school of 100 kids, I would be able to create a sort of an autonomous team, a team of teachers that worked collaboratively together to create thematic units. We have an applied arts teacher on the team. We value student relationships, and everything is sort of intertwined. We don't compartmentalize, like now we're in math, now we're in science. We use all of those knowledge and skills from those subject areas to solve problems, to produce content, those types of things. And so I think that for us is a little bit of what I was leaning on in terms of having that pass from a budget perspective so that we could see how that works. You know, I still, a fear that I have is if we go back to the numbers that Frank presented, like the 2.25, is that we go to a building, right, that opens at a 4.5 and we're still at a 2.5 level. Where I want to be is different. I want to be at a 4.5, still in a building that's at a 2.5, waiting to get into the building that would support our type of instruction. And so really I think what Frank talked a lot about, and I want to emphasize, is just how do we organize kids that allows us to meet their needs and to create really autonomy and flexibility and really sort of focus on intellectual curiosity from all of the stakeholders, not just kids, but also teachers. And so, you know, ideally when we get back to school, obviously there's a lot of things to think about besides this, but at some point we will get back to, you know, continuing this work with staff and then ideally get to a point where we can try some of these things firsthand. And prior to the school closure, we were collecting some baseline data on student engagement, how they're feeling about school. And with the idea with that was so that we could compare that if we did go to a kind of a pilot team, kind of take a look at the difference between how kids think about school and how they feel about school and how parents sort of view their child's engagement as well. And with the idea that if there's success there, that we could start to perhaps duplicate that on a larger scale.
Sounds wonderful. Do you think that you'll be able to begin it when you will it take a back seat, obviously, to starting school again, but do you think that's something you can implement this year?
I think, you know, when I'm taking a look at not being able to do the pilot team, I think we can continue to move forward with planning time and sort of the ability for me to say yes to people when they come up with, you know, ideas and things that they want to do. I still think we need to look at really paring down the standards and really focusing on key standards, which removes a little bit off the plate, so that we can move forward with developing content and experiences for kids that are more engaging and that really focus on the bigger picture, the 21st century skills, the guiding principles. In all reality, if we just taught the guiding principles through the lens of some of the content standards, we'd be able to create kids that are maybe a little bit more adept, able to solve problems, to create content, to be creative, those types of things. And so I think what is hard is yes, I'd like to move forward with those pieces. We can continue to kind of do project-based learning in the same way that we have, which is a little bit in isolation. We're already set up on teams. Teams can continue to do that. But until we really look at organizing kids in a different way and having teams solve the needs of the kids, which means we have a divide between applied arts and content teachers. They don't share the same kids.
Right.
So right away, we lose some of that integration, and the applied arts in all reality are an excellent vehicle to have STEM or health or foreign language sort of lead the way in expeditions, and have math, science, social studies, language arts teachers that be the ones supporting it. In all reality, it's not a bad way to deliver instruction to kids.
Right. Well, you're preaching to the choir for me, because that's the way I always liked to teach.
If I can also just jump in here for a second, I think one thing that I saw that was common for groups that Drew was working with and also groups that Randy had working, and it was just a common theme, which they talked about some of the physical limitations of their space, which is neither building really provides a lot of project-based space, where if you have a team or a couple teachers who are working on a project together, there's some hallway space, but not even the hallway space isn't a great spot to do that. So it was just interesting in listening to teachers from both saying, wouldn't it be great if we had some of these common spaces amongst our classrooms or around our classrooms that, we can have kids do things, be a little messy, working on things, working on projects, doing presentations, and just feeling the limitations in both buildings on how they were actually holding them up for being able to do some of the instructional activities that they wanted to try.
Anyone else have a question for Drew or comment? Seeing none, let's move on to, I want to say thank you, Drew. It looks
You're welcome.
an exciting,
It's you know, clearly a passion of mine, and you know, so I'm hoping that, and I've shared this with a few people. One professor that I had that I very much valued and respected, Chris Toy, when we were talking in school one day about how we sort of move forward with big ideas. You know, his response was really guts and kind of taking that leap. And I think, you know, that when you look at the research and we look at what we know about our own learning, I think we need to kind of rely on you know, our gut and how we feel about things and take a leap. Otherwise, I feel like, you know, we might be having the same conversation 5 years from now and not really move forward with things. And I think that can sometimes be that difference. I know that I have the staff that are willing and able to do this and move things forward. I think we just kind of need that, you know, that yes and that, yep, let's see what happens. Let's put it on, you know, our educators to design and create, and kind of step back and let them do their work. And I think we'll be very pleased with what the results are.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to Mr. Crockett from Jordan Small Middle School.
Thank you. So I was really much more enthusiastic than I had been in a while about a direction after I got done with the 2 days with Frank. And the main reason for that was it kind of built upon some work we'd already started to do, talking about more interdisciplinary units and teaming, and that had grown out of our coming through the curriculum guides that Christine had everybody work on going back 2 years ago, that really zeroing in on what were essential pieces, not looking at the whole curriculum, but by doing that work of writing the guide for anybody, the public, parents, and anybody could view it and not have it filled with, you know, every piece of the curriculum. It started to show some natural connections within grade levels, from, like, you know, science to math to social studies and so forth. So the group of folks that participated from Jordan Small in that second phase in October with Frank were really enthusiastic and saw a lot of things that they could connect with right now that we just need to build upon. So interdisciplinary planning is already kind of percolating, and there are little pockets of it going on throughout the building already. And then, you know, we've done a lot of work around differentiating instruction. And I think Frank referred to it as learning modalities, but to me, it's the same thing. It's that we don't teach the same content exactly the same way to the kids year after year, or we find that different ways of teaching content match the needs of the kids, or might be more in line with what you actually want them to learn. So certain things would have direct correlations to being out of the building, you know, certain science things. Other things might have natural fits with group work, or you know, like debate and things like that fit in social studies. So thinking out of the box more and providing a variety of ways to engage with content, and make it focused on the students you have in front of you that year, but also where's the best fit of an instructional model for the content that you're trying to get the kids to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So group work isn't the be all and end all. Direct instruction and lecture and taking notes isn't the be all and end all, but they both have value. And likewise, you wouldn't do a project with every unit, but certain units would lend themselves well to projects. So those conversations had already started, and this just helps drive it even further. And so I think, you know, Jordan Small's got a couple of good opportunities already going for it, in that it's not a building that's maxed out in capacity. And if you looked at, those of you that know Jordan Small and the 7-8, what we call the 7-8 wing, if you looked at that from tearing the roof off and looking down into it, and you looked at that Ipswich Middle School floor plan that Frank shared, there's a lot of similarities there in that we kind of have this cluster of rooms around an open area in the middle. The problem is the open area isn't big enough. But we also have a classroom in that wing that has a folding wall. So at times that is opened up for grade level presentations or guest speakers. And so that's stuff that's already happening. So I think we got to look at our physical structure, but we also have, you know, being relatively small operation, it's easier for me to have entire teams like the 7-8 team working together when you really got basically the 4 teachers of the courses at the grade levels, an interventionist part-time in that wing, special ed, GT part-time. Everybody's in that space already. And so I think there's things we can do right out of the gate. Of course, the closure has delayed some of this. We were talking, you know, on the 13th on our workshop day about planning for interdisciplinary units and how to think differently and how to use staff differently. And, you know, going back to what Janie was asking before to Drew, I think, you know, it's going to be harder now, but it's not going to be impossible to start doing more project-based work and developing interdisciplinary units. So there's the physical structure, and then there's the scheduling structure. And I've shared some ideas with the 7-8 team in terms of having various schedules that they could use on any given day. So, you know, one would be what we're doing now, which is basically 1-hour blocks. Another would be that math and writing are 1-hour blocks and are scheduled at certain points in the day for each group of kids that needs it. But that science, social studies, ELA could be a much longer block to do project-based work. It might be interdisciplinary, or it might be just focusing in one content area, like an hour and 20 minutes of just science-based work with 2 teachers. And they could be across the grade levels. We could share them back and forth. So, you know, being small allows us to be a little bit nimble sometimes as well and try some things out. I can't do it as a pilot with one group and not another, but I can do things within the 7-8 team or within the 5-6 team because they share the same schedule, they share the same physical space, and it's a pretty small staff. So we've got opportunities to look at schedule. And I mean, the staffing, there is one change I'm going to do with staffing, and it doesn't affect the budget, but it's how we use our staff. So our applied technology teacher, which would be the counterpart to the STEM teachers at Wyndham Middle, is going to be really, I'm going to move him around to different grade levels and different content areas to do project-based work rather than have his content separate. It's going to be embedded in projects.
That's good.
So this is going to require some careful planning and coordination, which I was hoping to do face-to-face with 5 or 6 people in a room who need to be having these lively conversations and writing on whiteboards. And, you know, that may prove to be a little difficult in June, but I think the interest is still there. The enthusiasm is still there. So we have, I can make that work as far as scheduling our applied arts blocks and free that individual up to kind of be the tech integrator within the course content. So we're going to use the space a little differently. He right now has a classroom space and a shop space. He won't need the classroom space anymore because he'll be moving in and out of different teams for different units. I'm going to have the GT space go into that, and that will allow us to have a makerspace and production area right in the 7-8 wing. So Mr. Newcomb, our GT teacher, is in that space right now and already has sort of a mini TV studio video area set up in there. We're going to leave that where it is, with the cameras and equipment that Richie Vickers has helped us acquire and learn how to use. And so that will also be a makerspace as well. And that won't require any expense. It's just moving people around as to where they're going to be located. The downside of it is a classroom, so it's going to be harder to supervise from if you have kids in one classroom and in the makerspace. So we've got to figure out our standard operating procedures for that, and who gets to go in there when, and how do we keep tabs on kids in small groups that aren't physically in the classroom. But as Chris alluded to, I mean, we kind of do that now with the hallways. I mean, every given day at Jordan Small, there's kids outside in the hallways, sitting on the floor, working on a map, working on a slideshow together on their laptops, things like that. So it's just kind of an extension of some of the things that have already started to happen. I do have a pipe dream, and I don't know if it's still Bill's pipe dream or not, but that is to tear out the walls of the teacher's lounge and move the lockers in the 7-8 wing and open up that space and use 2 smaller spaces for teacher work areas and teacher break areas, so that would then allow for a big space that could have collaborative corners, or it could be set up for a presentation if needed. And it'd be easy to keep a sight line to supervise kids working in that space while you're also working with kids in your classroom. So it wasn't a big bill from Bill. It wasn't a big ticket item to do that. I think his initial guess was around 80,000, and he may still have it in his budget, although some things may have changed since the last time I talked to him. But that is something that would be relatively inexpensive and could be done in the next year or two, I would think. And then, of course, there were some grandiose renovation ideas that came out of the staff who was turned loose. There's some really interesting ideas there. They're $1 million ideas. My people are good at spending other people's money, maybe, I don't know. They're very creative, let's put it that way. So we have a courtyard space that they said, that could be a big common area, and we can put a roof over it. And, it's a little more complicated than buying a bunch of 2x8s and plywood. But I think, it's something we could pursue and look at. We've been talking about moving the office in Jordan Small for years because of better security and just a better workspace. That's been on Bill's list for quite a while, probably 5 years. So, maybe down the line, I see it as 3 phases. The first one being, we're not changing the physical structure, but we are changing how we do business in that structure with scheduling, with staffing allocation, things like that. Phase 2 would be to open up that area that I was describing in the 7-8 wing, which is right now the staff lounge, and the mailboxes are in there and microwaves and things like that, but those could easily be somewhere else. And then phase 3 would be looking at a bigger renovation involving more of the building. The 5th and 6th wing is not as conducive to the type of collaborative space, open space that we've been talking about tonight. So the 5-6 wing, it's a little harder to get those spaces to function in a less traditional way. So that's just, some of the things that are percolating and I think are not unrealistic and could be accomplished in a year or 2 or 3.
One question or 2 questions I have for you both is, when we were doing the visioning around making I think it's the 5-6 wing now, or adding on to Jordan Small 100 years ago, we conceived of that large space that is in, is it the 5-6 wing that's over by the playground area?
Right.
We envisioned that the big space, because it was at that time a large space, that space would be for us to do work as a K2 team to do themes like ponds, studying ponds, and so we envisioned that, and this was what we were going to do, and very excited about it, and then we didn't. So I guess my hope and concern is that you have something that you can agree to and then accomplish, because it's easy to go back to the old ways because they've worked for so many years, and for, you know, in one sense there's that question. It's not an answer that I need right now, it's just that's a question that I have, a concern. The other concern is, or the question is, I think the idea of having an applied arts person within your group with is fantastic. You know, so in your team, have an applied arts person that's part of the team. How we manage that, because we have one art teacher, for example, for the whole school. So how do you? I mean, I know Drew has added one. But how do you accomplish that? How, you know, that's if you have 4 teams, do you need 4 art teachers, or do you need, is the PE teacher with one group and the music teacher with one group, and then you switch, or, you know? So that's my question. Drew?
So in terms of some models that exist out there already, King Middle, being a 6-8 school, what they do is typically have teams of 80 to 90 kids, with 4 content teachers, and then there's an applied arts staff member that's on team for 1 semester, and then they switch.
Okay.
And so they basically they kind of dedicate certain applied arts to different grade levels. So one team would have an experience for a semester with, say, a STEM teacher, and then the next semester, the STEM teacher would go to another team, and maybe the art teacher would come in, or the health teacher would come in. Some of it also relates to when you organize kids, how do you still meet the pieces of the contract in terms of prep periods and things like that? And different schools solve that in different ways, from early release time, such as the K5 model that we have, to sending all the kids on team out to applied arts that are not necessarily a part of the teams. They're just sort of their separate entity. And that's how King Middle does it. They send their kids out to a foreign language for 40 minutes. And then right after that 40-minute foreign language, they send their kids to PE. So the kids are off team for 80 minutes, which gives those 5 teachers the ability to come together and have common planning time twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week. And that's what's really key in this too, is it's highly, just like with kids and the work they're doing, the need for teachers, it's really highly collaborative. They need a lot of time to get together and plan. And so that becomes, you got to think about that too in the models.
And getting back to Jani's original point, I think, Drew kind of hit the nail on the head when he said, let's have a 4.25 mentality, or a 4.25 set of practices before we even have the building. Like it should be like just a big relief to have the space, because you've already you have a philosophy and a set of practices, and a program that's designed for a space you can't quite make yet. And so I think that's a critical way to make it really happen.
I like the way you said it's a relief to get into the space, because you're already starting and doing that. That's wonderful. It will be a relief to get into the space. And since that room, the area you're talking about in the 7-8 was once an entire huge open room, it should be easy to knock down those walls. They're not load bearing.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Well, and we also just remind everybody, we have, what, $475,000 in revolving renovation that will be going into Jordan Small for office configuration and security and some other pieces to that. So I think one thing that Bill is looking at is while we're doing that project, what are the things that we also can incorporate to save ourselves on some construction costs as well, while we have contractors on site. So it'll be exciting to see some of the changes that take place there.
So does anybody have any questions further for the two guys? Okay, seeing none. Thank you both for coming tonight. Oh, Marge, did you have, oh, you're saying goodbye. Okay, thanks all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, two of you anyway.
Bye. Thank you. Good night.
We're now moving on to, I'd like a motion about the budget. Who would like to move the budget? Okay, I will. I move to approve the proposed fiscal year 21 RSU 14 budget in the amount of $50,782,997.88.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
Amen.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
And I'm going to do a roll call vote here.
Yes, sir.
Mark Scavone,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Jenny Butler.
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded and voted, and it's approved, and it's a budget. Okay, the motion carries. That's what I meant to say. So Jenny, could I have a motion for the teacher?
I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation to grant second-year probationary status for the 2021 school year for the following teachers. Sarah Bolia, occupational therapist at Wyndham Primary School. Beth Chiazzo, kindergarten teacher at Wyndham Primary School. Susanna Stevens, grade 2 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Heather Reed, grade 1 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Catherine Hatfield, special ed, Wyndham Primary School. Marissa Rhodes, grade 2, Wyndham Primary School. Elizabeth Smith, 2/5 grade 2 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Jamie Beal, grade 2, Wyndham Primary School. Hillary McHugh, art teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Gail White, school nurse, Wyndham Middle School. Lindsay, I apologize, Scooswick, health teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Jamie Smith, 6th grade math science teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Michaela Lothrop, special ed teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Anne Boguer, health teacher, Wyndham Middle School. David Dyke, Latin teacher, Wyndham High School. Noah Esty, history teacher, Wyndham High School. Catherine Harry, music teacher, Wyndham High School. Megan Flanagan, health physical education teacher, Wyndham High School. Chris DiBernardo, mathematics teacher, Wyndham High School. Kenneth Poulin, social studies teacher, Wyndham High School. Timothy Sear, occupational therapist, Wyndham High School. Jennifer McVeigh, school psychologist, Wyndham High School. Christopher Malone, physical science teacher, Wyndham High School. Tammy McNulty, technology instructional leader, Wyndham High School. Kelsey McVeigh, half-time physical therapist, Raymond Elementary School. Tracy Peterson, special ed teacher, Raymond Elementary School. Sarah Childs, grade 2 teacher, Raymond Elementary School. Susan Gagnon, grade 3 teacher, Raymond Elementary School. Megan Uhays Nahas, special education teacher, Manchester Elementary School. Kimberly Fournier, social worker, Manchester Elementary School. Julie Clark, art teacher, Manchester Elementary School. Charles Martin, health teacher, Jordan Small Middle School. Jed Bloom, applied technology teacher, Jordan Small Middle School.
Lisa Ziesler, speech therapist, Manchester Elementary School.
Oh, I'm sorry if I missed one.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
okay.
Second. Go ahead, Pete.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Howell?
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes?
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
I didn't miss anyone, right? I'm playing squares, so.
Okay. Okay, so
All
the
right.
motion carries.
I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation to grant third-year probationary status for the 2020-21 school year to the teachers listed here. Amanda Carver, kindergarten teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Michelle Keith, grade 1 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Jolene Clausen, special education teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Brianna Carbone, grade 1 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Haley Sauerman, second grade teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Kimberly Hartwell, special education teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Amanda Doherty, kindergarten teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Anne Maria Goodwin, science social studies teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Jessica Golden, 8th grade teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Joyce Babbitt, library media specialist, Wyndham Middle School. Megan Good, speech therapist, Wyndham Middle School. Ellen Bailey, math coach teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Kristen Chavanel, library media specialist, Wyndham High School. Nicole Densmore, English teacher, Wyndham High School. Krista Habestraw, school counselor, Wyndham High School. Ryan Woodside, life science teacher, Wyndham High School. Emily Macaluso, physical science teacher, Wyndham High School. Alyssa James, art teacher, Wyndham High School. Jeff Conant, special education teacher, Wyndham High School. Ann Leverett, mathematics teacher, Wyndham High School. Margaret Rickert, 3/5 English teacher, Wyndham High School. Stephen Adams, science teacher, Wyndham High School. Michelle Lane, computer tech teacher, Wyndham High School. Darcy Finn, special education teacher, Wyndham High School. Robin Greeley, art teacher, Raymond Elementary School. Allison Spearin, kindergarten teacher, Raymond Elementary School. Mary Ellen Johnson, special education teacher, Manchester Elementary School. Tracy Henderson, teacher, grade 5, Manchester Elementary School. Deborah Malaire, teacher, grade 5, Manchester Elementary School. Brittany Chaplin, school nurse, Jordan Small Middle School. Kimberly Hutchins, special education teacher, Jordan Small Middle School.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Howell?
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Marge?
Okay. I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation to grant continuing contract status for the 2020-2021 school year to the teachers listed here. Shelley Roberts, speech therapist, Wyndham Primary School. Heather Slattery, grade 1 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Olivia Latham, kindergarten teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Brianna Butts, grade 2 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Kylie Trashida, I hope, kindergarten teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Caitlin Plain, speech and language therapist, Wyndham Primary School. Katharina Frost, special ed teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Nicole Rogers, kindergarten teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Melissa Fries, grade 3 teacher, Wyndham Primary School. Erin Beal, 7th grade teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Laura Grace, school psychologist, Wyndham Middle School. Emily Atwood, foreign language teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Richard Vickers, technology instructional leader, Wyndham Middle School. Adam DeVoe, special education teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Emily Higgins, special education teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Benjamin Williamson, grade 7 teacher, Wyndham Middle School. Carol Hazard, English teacher, Wyndham High School.
Connor McNeil, special education teacher, Wyndham High School. Martha Stone, guidance counselor, Raymond Elementary School. Courtney Reagan, school nurse, Raymond Elementary School. Katie Palaska, 5th grade teacher, Manchester Elementary School. Lisa Kennerson, special education coach, Manchester Elementary School. Margaret Sparrow, 5th grade teacher, Manchester Elementary School. Elizabeth Brooke Harris, social worker, Jordan Small Middle School. Rose Underkolfler, 3/5 music teacher, Jordan Small Middle School. Alexander Adams, music teacher, Jordan Small Middle School. Karen McMullen, special education coach, Jordan Small Middle School.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Marge Cavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
It's 8-0. The motion carries. Okay, renewal of administrator contracts.
I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation to grant extended contract status for the 2020-21 year to the following administrators. Craig Hames, head of school, assistant principal, Katahdin program.
It's been moved and
Second.
seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
Marge Cavoni,
I forgot I muted myself. Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
The motion carries. I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation to grant extended contract status for the 2020-2022 school year to the following administrators: Randolph Crockett, principal, Jordan Small Middle School; Elizabeth Peavy, principal, Raymond Elementary School; Kyle Rhodes, principal, Wyndham Primary School; Danielle Donini, principal, Manchester Elementary School; Andrew Patton, principal, Wyndham Middle School; Ryan Karen, principal, Wyndham High School; Crystal Varga Ward, assistant principal, Manchester Elementary School; Phil Rossetti, assistant principal, Wyndham High School; Vanessa Michaud, assistant principal, Wyndham High School; Diana Jordan, assistant principal, Wyndham Primary School; Kim McBride, assistant principal, Wyndham Middle School.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Christina Small,
Aye.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Aye.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Cavoni.
Yes.
I had to mix it up a little bit.
They're changing the order on us. That's,
Okay, the motion carries. So we have a lot of approvals of minutes. So let's go. I move to approve the minutes of the April 1, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? Christina?
It looks like one of the minutes, when we were approving the minutes in that meeting, it shows there was no vote.
Right.
Did we not actually vote on that? I don't remember.
Is that the one that it shows 0 to 0?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the approval of the March 25th minutes.
Yeah, meeting number 1, correct.
Right. So we approved them. So I don't know what we do now, but thank you. We saw that.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor?
Marge Cavoni,
Oh, we got to do, oh, sorry.
sorry.
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Aye.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Aye.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay, it's been, the motion carries. And now, okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes of the April 8th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Annie Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate, Kate Levier, Kate Levier,
Oh, sorry, I thought I said yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Oh, I move to approve the minutes of the April 15th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, oh, wait a minute. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
Is
All
this the April 15th one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't think I was at that one,
Okay,
and I'm listed in the attendance there.
okay. So we will take you
But
out.
I'm pretty sure.
And I have the attendance sheet in front of me, and you are correct, Anna, you were not there. So we will amend that agenda.
Thank you.
I'm going to put that in the notes for Terry.
I don't have the minutes right here in front of me. Are the votes correct in terms of the numbers?
I don't know.
Isn't that, yes, Jenny, is that the one we discussed?
No, the one we discussed was the 29th.
Oh, okay.
All the vote numbers add up to 8 with the exception of the adjournment. So that's, as long as I was the only one that wasn't there, that should be correct. It's just having me as attended.
Yeah, and everyone else was there.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
I'm going to abstain. I was there.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
I move to approve the minutes of the, are we on April 22nd,
Yes.
Yes.
2020 meeting?
It's been moved and
I'll second.
seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Marge Gavoni,
Aye.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Aye, aye.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
You ready?
Yep. Oh,
I
it's been, I'm sorry. The motion carries.
Thank you. I move to approve the minutes of the April 29th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
I my button. Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Button.
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay. So the motion carries. Okay, it's time for committee reports. Have there been any meetings of committees?
Finance is not met.
Okay.
Policy is not met.
Curriculum will be meeting next week. We have a very full agenda. Okay, now it's
Can
board.
I ask
Sorry, yes?
a quick question? Chris, I don't know, what are we calling the old SEA? Is it the new, is it still? Do they meet? I keep forgetting about them.
No, GSEA has been meeting monthly. In fact, we have our next meeting Monday afternoon over in Gorham, and it will be our last meeting of the year. And the agenda for that meeting is our Leadership Academy and what the format of that is going to look like for next year, because we're finishing up that Leadership Academy. So I think maybe something might be helpful for me to do at a future meeting is just to give an overview of the work that GSEA has done this year, some of the professional development and some of the services it's provided to the district. So I will add that to my list of things to inform the board about.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's board roundtable time. Anybody have anything round they want to share? Pete.
All right. Well, as we know, yesterday was Cinco de Mayo, and fitting for the day, early in the afternoon, we had some visitors come to our house. 3 of the Spanish teachers and Spanish teachers and advisors stopped by, and they presented my daughter Hannah, who's a freshman at the high school, with a letter letting her know that she has been chosen to be inducted into the National Spanish Honor Society.
That's wonderful.
So
Great.
congratulations to Hannah, but also a big thank you to those teachers and advisors who came out and made a very personal touch. And I know she wasn't the only one. I saw things on Facebook for
Oh, yes.
others that were chosen. So I
Yes.
just think that was great.
Marge?
I want to say the video that you put out there, Janie, on behalf of all of us was like totally astounding. It was just beautiful beyond words. And I have seen on Facebook and with different groups or whatever, I mean, everyone is so appreciative of that video and the heartfelt thanks and feelings that were expressed in it. So I want to thank you so much for doing that,
Well,
including the rest of us naturally.
of course, but it was Gary who really made it come to life, and his work was astounding and very touching.
If I can interrupt, though, I think it's fair to say that Janie Cummings wrote the script, and it was the script that carried the day, and Gary based his work on the very moving script.
Oh,
and I'm not so sure so many people are aware that, yes, it was a collaborative effort behind the scenes between Gary and let's look at the script and everything else. But the bottom line is the heart and soul of that message came from Janie on behalf of all of us.
Oh, well, on behalf of all of you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to say, oh, are you raising your hand again, Kate? No, okay.
No.
I would like to say that today is National Nurses Day, and we have some wonderful and amazing nurses in our district, but also the nurses around the world should be applauded for all that they are doing to help guide us through this impossible world that we're in right now, on our unprecedented world. It's also National Teachers Week, Teacher Appreciation Week, and we all appreciate all the wonderful work and difficult work that our teachers are doing. Marge raised her hand, but she has to unmute herself for us to hear her.
I know. Okay. One more thing. If you're on Facebook, you saw Jeannie and Company, the whole backpack feed everybody program. I think yesterday was their biggest. I think there was it was 180, around 180 families who came to collect bags. And the other thing is that we have a Zoom. Chris and I have a Zoom meeting with And we've invited Jeannie and we've notified the town. And hopefully after we have this meeting, we can also get some information up to whoever the appropriate people in Raymond would be as to when this ends, because it ends when school ends, that those people are going to be going somewhere for food, and it will be to the local food pantries. So we have a meeting with them, so they have, well, they're going to have a heads up as to what to expect, because that right now, our food pantry in Wyndham serves mostly seniors. There's a few families that go, but it's mostly seniors. So there will be an influx, and I'm not sure of the breakdown, but I think it's probably about 150 or so from Wyndham, and I think the rest were from Raymond. So we're going to try to make that transition from the district, and of course it's all donations. It's not taxpayer money. Well, it is, but it's money that's donated. Hopefully, to make that transition of these families being able to get bags to the local food pantries. We'll see what happens.
Thank you, Marge. All right. Doesn't no one else? Okay. The superintendent's report, Mr. Howell.
Sure. So I'll start with, believe it or not, it was a year ago tonight that I had a second interview with all of you.
Right.
And it's amazing looking back over the past year, all that's happened in really a short period of time. So as I was looking through my calendar today, and I knew that was coming close on that, but this Wednesday would have been the time to do that. So just want to start off with, first of all, appreciation for all of you. I know this is Teacher Appreciation Week, but appreciation for all of you for your service, but also for your support over the past year and helping me with my first year transition into this position in the district. So a couple things that I want to highlight tonight is that, yes, it's Teacher Appreciation Week this week, and today is National Nurses Day, and last Friday was Principal Appreciation Day, which sadly I missed that one on my calendar, but it was great to, Jenny, to hear your heartfelt words and to hear your message from the heart, and it came across that way. The feedback that I received was phenomenal for the work that you did. We will be sharing that video out to the community during our normal Friday, or what has become our Friday communication to families, and knowing that that's the day that they can expect some district communication so that they can go ahead and share that. And I know some of our staff members have shared it out, but we want to make sure that everybody in the RSU 14 community has had the opportunity to watch that. Also, just want to follow up on something that Marge said. I've been in communication with both town managers, and I've also had a chance to speak specifically in Raymond with the person who handles general assistance and starting some planning stages, and there'll be a meeting again on Monday to talk about food transition. And there's a number of families that are being provided with a service, which, you know, is the right thing for us to do as an RSU, but looking at how do we transition and look at different programming for the summer. And we want to make sure that it's a handoff and not a drop off. And we want to make sure that, you know, people come in for a soft landing and that their needs are being met over the summer as part of our greater school community. So planning is going on in both communities for that. I think it's important for the public, for anyone who may watch this Zoom video later on, but also for those of you involved in planning. That's something that's kind of near and dear in our hearts, and making sure, again, in both communities are taken care of. There's been a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes about graduation. And if you would have asked me right now, the #1 email that I've received from parents, it's not been about grading. It's not been about instruction that students have received during this extended closure. It's been about graduation and what's going to happen for graduation. And I thought many of us hoped in March that we'd be able to do a June graduation. Many of us hoped that August was a possibility, and August being in phase 3 of the governor's plans, we still don't know what August is going to look like. And so there's a team that's been working at Wyndham High School, making sure that we honor our students in June. And If August can happen, that's great. And I think there was an article in last week's Press Herald where I had a chance to kind of comment to say, here's some things that we'd like to do. But if that can't happen, we don't want to have missed the boat in June, and with our hopes set for August. So we hope to be able to publicly announce some things. There's some final contractual and insurance things that we are settling before we publicly announce our plans. But there's some really exciting things and creative things that can be done. And really, there's almost 3 overarching themes that have been running for this. One is honoring our seniors. A second one is including families, because yes, graduation is an event for our seniors, but it's just as much an event for the families that brought their seniors and helped them and supported them throughout the way, and making sure that families are part of whatever celebrations that we do. And then lastly, to maintain that safe environment that we're all in right now, because the last thing that we want to have is somebody sick from one of our ceremonies. And so making sure that we're following those guidelines. So again, we should have some things that we should be able to announce later this week, or hopefully the first of next week, once those contracts and those insurance things are taken care of, that we can take care of that. The other thing I just want to share with the board, which we've kicked off starting last week, but we've spent a lot of time getting a program up and running, making sure that instruction's going on. We've spent some time planning for now what a school look like to close. And now we're starting that process of how do we reopen in August? And really there's 3 models that we're looking at for August. One is a return to normal. One is a return to distance learning, and maybe some differences with that. And then a third one is, what does a partial opening look like? And, I wish that I had all the answers for you tonight. I can tell you that no one has those answers. The only credible back to school plan that I have read in the last 2 weeks comes from a school district in Montana that has 50 students K-12 and will be coming back with social distancing guidelines. And they have another school, or another school system in that district, the county district, has 14 students. They're coming back as well, but nobody has figured it out quite yet for 1,000 kids in a school. But we're continuing to plan through that process. Right now at the state level, there's a group that includes 42 individuals, that includes everyone from representing nurses to superintendents to special education to the teachers, looking at what a possible opening will be. And we're looking for some guidance, much like today. And you probably saw in the priority notice, we had some guidance about graduation. We expect some guidance by Friday on summer schools, extended school year, because the requirements for schools are different than summer camps. And so we hope to have some guidance around that. But we've started some committees looking at just an overall governance, committee looking at health and social emotional learning, instruction, and RTI, because we want to see where kids are at and where the gaps are to make sure that instruction is properly tailored. We have a group working on school operations, on transportation, on technology, and on athletics. And looking to then, much like we had an extended school closure plan, to have a school opening plan that we can present to you, at least in a rough draft. I think Christine and I have been talking about, hope to get something by the end of this month that we can have in a rough draft form, but that we'll continue to work on as information is given to us, because we know that we're going to be in distance learning to the end of the year. We've got a general idea of how we're going to handle end of the year things at this point. But again, what does August look like? What does September look like? And part of it is going to be relying upon direction we receive from CDC and also from Maine Department of Education. But as soon as we have more information and have a better, what's the word I'm looking for here, when our plan is moving beyond the basic draft that it is at right now, we'll be good. We will be good, and we'll get that information to you. So it's been quite a year.
Boy, I'll say. So thank you very much, Chris. Could I have a motion to adjourn the regular meeting, please? I just did that. I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Marge Scavone,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
and Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, and see you in 2 weeks.
Oh
Thank-
my goodness.
Not until
Wow, 2
20th.
weeks.
All right.
A vacation.
It is a vacation. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.